It is Ash here today to tell you that this is a special video for those of you who follow me on TikTok, but it is purely a video to commemorate my 4K follower mark. As of this month, February, it will be 2 years since I've been on this app, which is a little bit terrifying if you ask me. I personally kind of hate that idea that I've been making content for 2 years. So I wanted to do a big video to call back to the early days of my Turtles content commentary, lol. Specifically on my TikTok, I did like a 6-part video essay thing, but I want to talk about why April from the 2012 series is kind of overhated and she deserves more respect. So let's get into it. So there are a couple points I need to make in this video fully, but actually I'm gonna wait to do the messiest ones towards the end, and I want to just put a disclaimer at the beginning of the video too. So here's my thing, right? This criticism of April's character, people hating on April, is a very, very popular opinion in the fan base and has been for a very, very long time. So a lot of people will not be hearing me out. The second I introduced this video, they fucking clicked off and tuned out completely. And that's okay. You don't want to listen to what I have to say, that's fine. I don't care about that. But two, I do actually have critiques of April's character. April's character is not perfect. I love her and I will defend her, but she's not perfect. So keep that in mind when I'm discussing a lot of these points in the video. And the first point I actually want to get into is one of the less messy points, and that is the fact that she is useless, according to some people. One of the main things that I see cited on the internet pretty regularly as to why she sucks is that she is quote unquote useless or too needy, which I think is really stupid and unfair, because her not having the same abilities as the Turtles is more realistic than if she was just super mega OP all the time. Because the other thing is, the other criticism I see of her character that makes no sense is the same people who are oh, she's useless, she sucks, whatever, she needs everybody to save her all the time, also talks about how way too OP and how much of a Mary Jane she is, and there's just no in between space for her to live, and I think that's so dumb. In terms of the useless thing, everybody's always saying how she's flying off on her own, doing stupid shit, and then always ends up needing the Turtles to bail her out, which I think is really unfair because, yes, she has less abilities, which is why she needs the Turtles to bail them out, but this is a huge double standard that I've noticed with her character is she doesn't get to do that, but literally every other fucking character on the show gets to. We're talking Master Splinter, Raph, Donnie, Leo, Mikey, literally fucking everyone at some point or another, multiple times throughout the series, goes off, does some stupid shit, and needs everybody else to bail them out for it. Leo and New Girl in Town leaves the fucking team to go hang out with a Foot Clan girl that he has a crush on, who also happens to be his stepsister, which he doesn't know that, but anyway, that's number one. Two, you have Mikey going off in Shellacney, also in the Leatherhead episode. Raph, do I even really need to give an example? Dude does that every other fucking episode. I mean, at some point during the series, they acknowledge that Raph has quit the team 37 fucking times. It's a baked in part of his fucking character, okay? And then you have Donnie in Operation Breakout, i.e. when he was saving Kirby O'Neill from the Crank and accidentally unleashing the neutralizer, which ended up being a huge pain in the ass for fucking everyone for half a season. So I feel when April fucks up, it's not actually that deep, but when everybody else is going off and flying off on their own and screwing shit up, nobody has shit to say. They're just oh, it's character growth. It's a moment of growth for their character. And I'm okay, but what about April, man? The other thing, I feel it is slightly, the useless thing is slightly intertwined, I've seen, with the weird love triangle thing that I see a lot of people citing as to why she sucks or why she's the worst April or whatever. I don't know, I guess one of my main gripes is the way people talk about her character is actually is pretty misogynistic in a lot of cases. It's just kind of sketchy. I'm bro, cut her a fucking break. Especially again, they have nothing to say about how shitty the other characters are at times, but they have everything to say about her and how much she sucks and whatever. The other thing is that I don't think people understand the fact that April is not written in the way that she traditionally is written. When April is typically written, she is written as an older kind of almost aunt figure vibe, cousin. She's not actually written to be the same age as they are, like in the 2012 show. 2012, aside from Rise, is one of the only versions of the Turtles where she's actually their age. So she's not going to be perfect. She's going to be rough as hell around the edges. She doesn't have that experience and maturity that other versions of April do. So people immediately writing her off is so silly, especially when other women on the show aren't even written to be well-rounded characters. And I think it's really interesting how characters like Mona Lisa get a pass and April doesn't. Like, I love Zero, he's a great guy, but the writers really don't know how to write teenage girls, and she fully suffers from that too. Now let's get into the messy reason why people hate her, and that is because of the love triangle aspect of the show. That starts in season 2, in the episode The Good, the Bad, and Casey Jones, because Casey is introduced. Now, people already had this criticism of April prior to Casey being introduced into the show, but everyone was like, oh, she's leading Donnie on. I think this is like a gross misunderstanding of the timeline of the love triangle drama happening in the show, but also I think very unfair to April in this scenario, especially when people are very unwilling to criticize Casey and Donnie, but will talk shit all fucking day about how April sucks and Donnie deserves better and oh my poor baby child. It's very weird to me, actually. For starters, let's break down the actual timeline of events that happens during the love triangle. So obviously, when April and Donnie meet for the first time, it's literally in the first fucking episode. Donnie sees her and he's like, I'm in love. Even though, as Raph clearly points out, he's literally never seen any other fucking girl in his entire life. Like, dude is just so lonely that the first woman he sets eyes on, he's like, holy shit, right? Like, that's insane to me. So they become friends, right? Obviously, under very upsetting circumstances, but they do become friends, and he's got a little thing for her and she just wants to be friends. Clearly, like, she doesn't really see that he has a thing for her, and then eventually you can see that she's kind of catching on because he fucks up a couple times and kind of lets on a little bit more than he meant to, you know what I mean? I.e. the episodes with like Metalhead and stuff like that where he's like, hee I like you, but like you weren't supposed to hear that, you know what I mean? She's clearly still not interested. Anytime he's like actively flirting with her, she's kind of like brushing it off or just reacting normally, like she's not flirting back necessarily, right? Yes, there is the occasional kiss on the cheek as a thank you / hug as a thank you, but that's like that's kind of what just friends do. Like, yes, the kiss thing is kind of bordering on flirty, but that doesn't mean really shit, and I'll get into why in a second. But anyway, then Casey gets thrown into the mix, right? Season 2, we meet Casey, and April has stopped talking to the Turtles because they fucked up really fucking bad and mutated her father after she literally just got him back. I have seen people criticize, this is less often, but I have seen people criticize April for not being cool with the Turtles after they fucking mutate her dad, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, what? Like, how could you not be understanding of that? Like, it's so stupid to me. But anyway, Casey's introduced, right? And Casey's flirting with her. April is on a break from the Turtles. She's like not even, like, she wasn't interested in Donnie before, but she's really not interested now, right? Because he fucked up really big, and so did his brothers, and she wants nothing to do with them ever. She never wants to fucking forgive them ever in her life. And she doesn't have a whole lot of friends at school because of all the traumatic shit that she's been through. So she's friends with like Irma, and then Casey kind of drops into her fucking life because she's required to tutor him. God knows why, but it's happening. And this is where shit gets really weird. Donnie starts like actively stalking April. Like, he admits to memorizing her schedule and like following her all over the place, and even like accidentally sicks Timothy, who at this point has been turned into Mutagen Man, on her, which is great. What a great image for Donnie. I mean, really, I'm so glad. God damn it. But Donnie literally goes like full on creepo mode, and April is being aggressive about like, stop fucking talking to me. Like, she confronts him more than once to be like, stop following me. I know you're there. You're bugging me. It's annoying. Please stop. You're being weird. Like, it even gets to the point where like Donnie gets chewed out by Master Splinter, who's like, you need her to leave her the fuck alone. Like, you need to stop, which is how you know it's bad, because Master Splinter is acknowledging it. And he never acknowledges it, ever. Eventually, Casey, Donnie, everyone, they kind of make up a little bit. They're all friends. But Casey and Donnie are like now fighting for her attention, right? So they're like flirting with her, whatever. She's kind of playing both teams. She flirts a lot with Casey, it seems like she's a little flirty with Donnie, but like not really, not as much as Casey. She seems very interested in Casey at the moment, like she has a thing for him. And then the invasion happens, right? And season 3 starts, and they're on the farm, right? They're on the farm recovering. Leo's in a fucking coma, and the first episode opens with April writing in her journal about what had just happened, kind of giving us a monologue 2003 style about what the fuck just happened and how she's feeling and how she's coping. And the way she's talking about it, she's like, I just lost basically a father figure in my life. One of my best friends, practically my brother, is in a fucking coma. I don't know about the state of my home. I don't know about the state of the world. I'm fucked up. I'm sad. And there's a scene in the first episode where they split up into groups and they're looking in the woods, but they're in the woods, and Casey's like, you've been cold to me this whole time. Like, what's your problem? Like, why are you so fucking mad at me all the time? Like, why aren't you like, you know, being flirty back? Like, what's up with that? And she gets kind of cut off, but she's like, Casey, like she's about to be like, I'm not fucking interested anymore. So clearly the writers, in the very, very sloppy, not clean way, are trying to establish the fact that like she is fully not into dating at all. Any kind of like romantic advances that happen in Northampton that Donnie pursues, like we have the episode of Foot Too Big where he's bringing her the music box and all this weird shit, and she's just like really uncomfortable, and you can see that. Then his brothers are like, you need to lay the fuck off, bro. Like, please calm down, chill out. And you know, both Casey and Donnie kind of get the hint, but like not really, especially not Donnie. And obviously in A Foot Too Big, this is, while people understand what it's serving its purpose for Donnie's character, people don't understand the moment that happens at the end of the episode, and this is where like the biggest controversy about her character is. The messiest part, if you will, which I'm going to skip over for now because we're going to come back to that. After Northampton, they go back to the city. Donnie and Casey are still like fighting for her affection. We see Casey kind of losing interest over time, but Donnie's still like really into her, and he's like flirting and blah blah blah. But you can see for the rest of the series, like there are moments where she's kind of flirty back, but like not really. And again, you have those like little like give him a kiss on the cheek whatever moments. But more often than not, she's like joking about it. Like she's like punching him in the arm, being like, heh, like that's so stupid or whatever. Like she's kind of actively not encouraging it, really. So a lot of people have not fully paid attention to like the timeline of events, specifically in terms of like how she is perceiving the relationship. A lot of people, when I see people break down the timeline of the live love triangle, they're doing it from either Casey or Donnie's perspective, but they're not looking at it through a lens from April's character. And I think that does her a huge disservice, because writers did her a little bit dirty, and that the breaks between interests in certain characters are very much not clean, like at all. I mean, keep in mind, these are the same writers who brought us like accidental incest with like Leo and Karai, so you really have to be patient with them when it comes to the relationship writing in this show. But let's get to the whole thing regarding the timeline that I think a lot of people mainly cite as like why she's problematic or whatever. And the main thing I hear, the very, very common phrase is April was leading Casey and Donnie on, but mostly Donnie, blah, blah, blah. She was leading them on. Understand something about me right now. I don't believe in leading people on, and I think the concept of leading people on is extremely fucking outdated. And I think this like criticism of her character is really misinformed. I think, and very, again, kind of covertly misogynistic. The concept of leading somebody on, according to the dictionary, is to, quote, persuade someone into believing something that is untrue, i.e., like leading someone to believe that in a relationship context that you are also interested in them, right? And usually when people talk about leading someone on, they're talking about it in terms of like, oh, like, you know, I was on a date with someone and I bought them dinner and they didn't come home with me, so they were leading me on. Or, oh, I like someone and they flirted back, so they must like me back, so I was really mad when I asked them out and they said no. And my main issue with a lot of these statements is that they are kind of refusing to consider the concept of consent. To give you all a basic rundown of like why consent works the way it does is basically just to explain to you that like consent really only works if you can say no, right? Like the definition of consent is giving someone permission to, you know, be in a relationship with you or to do something with you. You cannot consent if you are being coerced into saying yes. And also, you are allowed to say no at any time. Withdrawing your consent is within your right, and that is how consent works. And I don't think enough people understand the fact that you can withdraw consent at any time. But that's why I think something like leading someone on is really, really outdated. I think more often than not, when people are talking about leading someone on, it's because they've misconstrued somebody else and don't actually understand that because they bought someone dinner or they flirted back or whatever, it's on and off again, doesn't mean that a person is entitled to somebody else in a relationship, entitled to intimacy, entitled to whatever they think it is. You don't automatically deserve to date someone or to be with someone because they gave you some attention sometime. They always have the right to say no. Like, it's plain and simple. So the main moment that this leads back to is in A Foot Too Big at the end of the episode when Donnie confronts April. She's like chopping wood outside and he's like, I understand what it's like now and I'm really sorry for making you uncomfortable. And then he goes into this bit about, he's like, I'm just a freak and you're like a pretty girl and we're not meant to be together, blah blah blah. And there's like a pause where the camera pans to April's face and she's kind of like looking at him with this like look. And you can tell immediately that the look on her fucking face, or at least to me when I watched the episode, I was like, she is feeling pity. There is pity in her eyes. She feels bad. Because like, yeah, even though she doesn't find Donnie romantically enticing, whatever, it's not for her, like at the time, he's still her friend and she feels bad. And she knows that he's been harboring a crush for a very long time, but it's still shitty. So she gives him a kiss, right? And Donnie's like really confused. And like, yeah, that's really confusing for someone who's been like on and off flirting with this girl for however long. Like, it's kind of like, oh shit, well, what does that mean? You know, like, I don't know what that means. Like, what does that mean? But more often than not, this moment reminds me of just like Donnie's character and all the shit that Donnie has done throughout the course of their friendship / situationship that is really fucking uncomfortable. Which is that, like, in this moment, it feels more like Donnie is, like, trying to convince her to pity him and trying to convince her to change her mind by being pitiful, by victimizing himself in this situation. He can't just, like, flat out fucking apologize and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. He apologizes in the same breath as victimizing himself because he's, like, sad, whatever. Like, if you fuck up and you make someone uncomfortable in a relationship, you apologize and you move on and you do better. You don't guilt them into feeling bad about something that isn't even their fucking fault. I see less people talking about how Donnie victimizes himself while apologizing, instead of the fact that everyone only wants to talk about the fact that April kissed him after that. And I think that people are way harsh. And again, I think this is just like thinly veiled misogyny. Whether people realize it or not, it is in fact thinly veiled misogyny. I've always loved 2012 April. Like, she is one of the most fresh versions of April out there. I think choosing to make her the same age as the Turtles was really, really refreshing. You know, April's always been like a college student or a lab assistant or significantly older, and it made the Turtles being teenagers more believable. She was a teenager in the human world, you know, she's like sharing those experiences with them. And I feel like the moments we get to see the Turtles being teenagers with her are some of my favorite moments on the fucking show. It creates this like deeper bond that I think a lot of the other Aprils, obviously excluding Rise April because she is also a teen, you know, it creates moments of like a deeper understanding between the characters and makes their little found family feel more cohesive. So I think a lot of people hating on 2012 April makes me really sad because, well, yes, her character is not perfect. Again, I have ideas and qualms about certain aspects of her character, things that I don't like very much, which I won't actually do a video on because people just want to hear me talk shit about April because that's what everyone does. I'm not doing that here. But she definitely deserves better in terms of the reception from the fans. Like Ciro, who's a lovely man who I've met, and other showrunners in the show wanted to make her an independent teenage girl, and that means that she's not going to be perfect. She's a little bit rough around the edges. She's not as old as other versions of April. She's trying to figure it out in the world all by herself without her dad, trying to, you know, DIY her fucking existence, you know, trying to make it through day to day, not getting killed, going to school, failing trig, learning to kill people. Like, it's complicated. And I love April, and I felt April was definitely like a very relatable character to me when I was like 13. I was like, dang, I know how that feels. That's really cool. I don't know, that was something that was really nice, and she feels more three-dimensional because of it, because she's not perfect and she's a little bit rough around the edges sometimes. I'm not here to change your mind, I'm just here to tell you what I think. So I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for 4,000 followers. I'm about to lose like 45 million of them, but thanks guys. Bye.